am Tara Cushing, a fellow at Gettysburg College Civil War Institute, and today I'm doing a spot interpretation on Alonzo Cushing. I'm in the Gettysburg battlefield at the angle and near the Corps of Trees, which was a major site for the picket charge of the Gettysburg battle. Just a little background on Alonzo Cushing. He was born January 19th, 1841 in Wisconsin, and 6 years later he and his family moved to New York after his father died. He has 3 brothers, and after high school he attended the U.S. Military Academy, better known as West Point, and he graduated 12th out of 34 in 1861. And that is right around when the Civil War started. He started his military career as part of the Potomac Battery A, 4th Artillery 2nd Corps, and there he trained volunteer Union soldiers, as well as was an ordnance officer and a topographical engineer. He was described by men as well-liked, calm under pressure, and very skilled, as well as very loyal to the Union Army. Over the next 2 years, he fought in many important battles, such as Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, and Battle of Bull's Run. So he was still fairly experienced, but it was nothing to prepare him for the bloodshed at Gettysburg. Alonzo's men were set in the center of the Union's 2nd Army Corps on Seminary Ridge, and during the first day that they were there, July 2nd, there was not much gunfire, but there was some, and 2 of his men died. That, however, was nothing compared to the slaughter that happened the next day, July 3rd. On this second day for these men, they were all pretty much laying around until around 1 o'clock. They heard a big boom from 2 Southern cannons. And so right on top of them now was the South and these Confederate soldiers. And right from this, there was banging, and it was super loud from these cannon fire, and there was smoke and dust in the air, and the ground was shaking. These Confederate soldiers, led by General Pickett, really wanted to destroy the Union position here. They were constantly bombarding them, and many men lay dead and dying from all the shrapnel and all the damage that was happening to them. And many things were being destroyed. And at one point, one of the wheels from a cannon broke off, and the men tried to retreat. And at this point, Alonzo told them that they could not retreat and pointed a pistol at their head until they followed his orders. Constant cannonage left Cushing's battery in shambles. There were only a handful of men left, and only 2 working cannons. And he himself was painfully wounded by shrapnel earlier in the battle. But he was unwilling to leave the battle early, and he requested by General Webb that he could stay and move his cannons down the angle. And this was approved, so he did that, and they were adjacent to the 69th Pennsylvania. And there they set up the cannons, and he even ordered that they pile in more canisters so it would act like a giant shotgun. General Pickett's men continued to press on, crossing Emmitsburg Road and continuing to Seminary Ridge, where Cushing and his troops were. They tried to hold out against the Southerners, continuing fire, and Alonzo Cushing continued to lead his men, but it was not enough. They could slowly see the Southerners inching closer and closer. And during this, Alonzo was further injured, and it is allegedly told that he was holding his organs to stop them from falling out at this point. So he was gravely injured. Lieutenant Cushing was told to get to the rear, but he refused to leave his post. With the help of Sergeant Fugger, who was holding him up, he was able to continue fighting, and he screamed one last shot. Moments later, he was shot in the mouth and killed instantly. He truly died a heroic death. For a soldier to die facing the enemy, standing with his men, and one so young leading his soldiers so bravely, that is a truly heroic death. And with the help of him and other men, the Union was actually able to push back Pickett's men and win the battle at Gettysburg. After seeing this terrible scene of their lieutenant dying, the men had to continue fighting. Fugger caught Lieutenant Cushing's body and brought him back, while the rest of the soldiers had to continue until General Webb sent reinforcements, and they were eventually able to push back Confederate men. Otherwise, the rest of them retreated. After this battle, they were immediately combined with Battery 1, and then later became part of the Horse Artillery 1. At the end of these 2 days, 40 men had died, and all officers were killed or wounded. But eventually, his battery went on to complete many more battles in the Civil War. Lieutenant Alonzo Cushing ended up being buried at his alma mater, West Point, with full honors. And on his gravestone it says, "Faithful until death," and that he was. Later in 1887, his friends and fellow officers ended up making him this plaque, and those over there were related to him. In his family, Alonzo was not the only person who fought. 3 of his brothers fought in battles, and 2 of them ended up dying. So the Civil War and soldiers was very impactful to his family personally. Alonzo Cushing is just one story out of the many. There were 40 soldiers from his battery that died at Gettysburg in those 2 days. There were 51,000 men who died at Gettysburg. And in the Civil War in general, it was about 2% of the population that died. And all of those men have their own stories to tell. Lieutenant Cushing was awarded many honors after death. He was posthumously promoted to lieutenant colonel. And on the USS Gettysburg, a more recent Navy vessel, the officers' dining hall was named after him. And in 2014, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. It was a very long process to get Cushing his Medal of Honor. His family pushed for it for over 30 years, and in his hometown in Wisconsin, the people and governor there believed that it was long overdue. In 2003, a senator even endorsed it, and in 2010, the Army endorsed it, and it was approved. But it took 150 years after his death for him to be awarded this. And it wasn't until 4 years later that his family and friends could go to the reception by Obama where they were given his Medal of Honor. And he is actually the latest person from the Civil War to be given a Medal of Honor to date. The Civil War is still a very talked about subject, as shown with Alonzo Cushing being recently awarded many honors. And this could be because of this tragic romance that he has in his story, that